In the vast web of the multiverse, the Exploratorium drifts silently. The crew remains unaware that their journey is about to take an unexpected detour. As they discuss their dwindling food supplies, a seemingly harmless comment from Victor will lead to a revelation about the unsettling truth behind what we eat.
We're down to the last of the chicken and some canned something. This isn't looking good, guys. I hope you're all prepared for a very creative dinner tonight.
Don't worry, darling. You'd be amazed at what a little ingenuity and a few tricks can do. I can make something from nothing.
Victor, when you say tricks, you wouldn't happen to be referencing practices that Earth-93 might classify as food fraud, would you?
Fraud is such a harsh word. I prefer enhancing the experience. You know, a little creativity never hurt anyone.
Enhancing, huh? That sounds suspiciously like making something look better than it really is. But what exactly is food fraud?
Food fraud is the intentional alteration, misrepresentation, or substitution of food products for economic gain. It often involves diluting, mislabeling, or substituting ingredients with cheaper alternatives, deceiving consumers about the true nature of what they're buying.
Like when some companies add water to chicken to increase its weight, or mix cheaper oils with olive oil, and still label it as extra virgin. Remember that olive oil scandal, where nearly 70% of imported extra virgin olive oil was found to be fake according to a controversial study? It's not just a case of bad taste, but a global issue with real consequences.
Indeed, that case caused quite a stir, although subsequent tests have shown improvements. Still, it highlights how widespread and subtle food fraud can be.
I knew it was bad, but I didn't realize it was that pervasive. Now I'm even more concerned about what you're about to cook, Victor.
A subtle shift in the ship's atmosphere signals a new development, an unexpected detour.
What was that?
It seems we've entered a magnetic field. Our power reserves are draining, and we'll need to recharge before continuing our journey. Prepare for a brief pause in our travels.
No worries, we'll get through this. And when we do, you'll have the finest meal ever created from scraps.
As the ship settles into the magnetic field, the crew prepares for what lies ahead, both in their journey and in the revelation of what truly lies on their plates. Suspended within the cosmic web, the Exploratorium floats, tethered to the threads of infinite realities. The ship's systems hum with the low, steady pulse of recharging energy, a subtle reminder of the multiverse's immense power.
Well, while we're waiting, I suppose it's time to show you how to make a feast out of practically nothing.
Victor disappears briefly and returns with a platter of what appears to be an abundant meal, despite the crew's dwindling supplies. Chicken that looks unnaturally plump, a salad that seems far too vibrant given their limited resources, and a pudding with an unusual jiggle.
How did you manage this, Victor? And are those just balls of sawdust with... what is that red stuff? Is that ketchup?
Fiber, my dear, will have you moving in mere moments.
Seriously, Victor, sawdust with ketchup!
So what? I was eating paper with milk drawn on it when I was a babe. A little bit of science, a dash of creativity. Nothing that a five-star chef wouldn't do.
Enhancements like the phosphates, often injected into poultry to make it retain water, increasing weight and altering texture. According to recent reports, these practices have led to chicken that is suspiciously juicy but lacks natural flavor.
Something like that. But don't worry, it's all perfectly safe, mostly.
This isn't going to turn into one of those horror stories about food fraud, is it? Like those rubbery fish or spongy shrimp people keep finding?
The conversation takes a turn as the crew starts to realize that Victor's culinary enhancements might be closer to real-world food fraud than they'd like to admit.
Actually, Aurora's right to be concerned. Recently, several TikTok creators have gone viral by exposing bizarre food textures in everyday groceries. For example, users like The Food Detective and Truth in Treats have showcased watermelons that seem rubbery and bananas that peel away with a doughy texture. Look them up and see for yourselves. They deserve the views. Their videos are an eye-opener. These videos highlight potential adulteration or the use of chemicals in food that we would never expect.
You mean like that time a TikToker found a fish fillet that squeezed out liquid like a sponge? That's just good old-fashioned resourcefulness on the manufacturer's part.
Or it could be a sign of food fraud. When companies inject fish with water or chemicals to increase weight, they're not just cheating consumers. They're potentially introducing harmful substances into the food supply.
Precisely. And it's not just isolated incidents. A study by the FDA found that up to 20% of seafood in the market could be mislabeled, often to pass off cheaper farmed fish as wild caught. The economic incentives are high, but so are the risks to public health. Some fish might be treated with substances banned in many countries, leading to long-term health risks.
The issue goes beyond seafood. The crew's conversation reflects a broader concern. Food fraud is not just about taste or money. It's about trust and safety, two things that should never be compromised.
So, what else are we eating that isn't what it seems?
Well, if you must know, olive oil is a big one. A recent analysis found that nearly 70% of imported olive oils labeled as extra virgin were actually mixed with cheaper oils, a practice that's as profitable as it is deceptive.
And let's not forget about honey. In an article published by the National Honey Board, it was revealed that nearly a third of honey sold in the US is adulterated with sugar syrups, often from rice or corn, reducing its nutritional value and flavor.
That's just unsettling. I mean, what's the point of paying for quality if you're getting the same stuff they use to sweeten soda?
As the ship recharges, the crew's conversation drifts deeper into the murky waters of food fraud. They discuss the implications of what's on their plates, leading to a deeper exploration of this global issue.
It's all part of the experience. If everyone's doing it, can you really call it fraud? Or is it just good business?
Or maybe it's just unethical and dangerous. I'm not sure what's worse, the fact that it happens or that people get away with it.
The increase in food fraud is partly due to the complex global supply chains that make it easier to mask adulteration. For instance, countries like China and India have been at the center of several high-profile cases involving everything from contaminated milk to misrepresented spices.
As the conversation continues, the crew contemplates the broader implications of food fraud. Their concerns echo those of millions who unknowingly consume adulterated products every day, raising questions not just about food safety, but about the ethics of the global food industry.
At the end of the day, it's survival of the fittest in the food business. But then again, if everyone's cheating, who's really winning?
Maybe no one is, Victor. Maybe no one is.
With their ship still in the process of recharging, the crew prepares to dive even deeper into the complex and often unsettling world of food fraud, setting the stage for a thorough examination of this global issue in the chapters to come. As the Exploratorium continues to recharge in the heart of the multiverse, the crew gathers for a deeper discussion. What started as a casual conversation about Victor's creative cooking methods has unraveled into a full-blown exploration of one of the most pervasive and unsettling issues of our time: food fraud.
To start, food fraud is a global issue that affects almost every aspect of the food industry. From the meat on our plates to the honey in our tea, it's astonishing how widespread this problem really is. One of the most infamous cases is the 2013 European horse meat scandal, where horse meat was found in products labelled as beef across several countries. It highlighted how easily fraud can slip through even the most regulated supply chains.
But let's not get too carried away, Glitch. According to some reports, the economic impact of food fraud isn't all negative. Some argue that it helps keep prices down for consumers, especially in tough economic times. After all, if people are getting their protein, does it really matter if it's beef or horse? It's still meat, right?
That's a pretty slippery slope, Victor. Not only is it deceptive, but there are real health risks involved. For instance, the same horse meat scandal also raised concerns about drug residues that aren't safe for humans. The problem with food fraud is that it's not just about what you think you're eating. It's about what's actually in your food.
Indeed, the scope of food fraud extends far beyond the occasional mislabeled product. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry that touches every corner of the globe. According to a study by the World Customs Organization, food fraud costs the global food industry an estimated $40 to $50 billion annually. And it's growing.
Let's break that down further. The top perpetrators of food fraud include countries like China and India, which have been involved in numerous scandals. In China, for instance, the 2008 melamine milk scandal led to the deaths of 6 infants and made hundreds of thousands of people ill. This incident was a wake-up call, revealing just how far some are willing to go to cut costs.
And let's not forget India's issues with adulterated spices and dairy. In some cases, turmeric has been found to contain harmful dyes like lead chromate to enhance its color. This isn't just about deception. It's about the long-term health impacts on millions of people.
But you have to consider the other side of the coin. Food fraud, in some cases, can be seen as a response to overwhelming consumer demand for cheap products. When consumers demand low prices, companies cut corners. In a way, isn't it just the market responding to what people want?
That's a dangerous argument, Victor. It assumes that consumers are fully aware and complicit in this deception, which they aren't. Many people are paying a premium for products like extra virgin olive oil or organic honey, thinking they're getting something pure, when, in reality, it's often mixed with cheaper ingredients. The consumer isn't driving this deception. They're being misled by companies looking to boost their profits.
The olive oil industry is a prime example of this. According to research, nearly 70% of imported olive oils labeled as extra virgin in the US were found to be adulterated with cheaper oils. This deception not only defrauds consumers, but undermines the entire industry, making it harder for honest producers to compete.
And it's not just olive oil. Honey, one of the most commonly adulterated products, is often mixed with sugar syrups, especially in countries like Turkey and India. This practice has been exposed by numerous studies, including one by the National Honey Board, which found that nearly a third of honey samples tested were fraudulent.
But what about the companies that are actually trying to do the right thing? It's not all bad news. There are defenders in this fight against food fraud. For instance, Whole Foods Market and fair trade organizations are known for their rigorous testing and transparent supply chains. They're working hard to ensure that what you see is what you get.
That's true. Companies like Costco, despite facing some allegations in the past, have made significant strides in quality control, especially with products like their Kirkland Signature olive oil. They've implemented strict testing measures to ensure authenticity, which is a step in the right direction.
Then there are those in the middle, like Walmart and Trader Joe's. Both have faced criticisms for the quality of certain food products, but they also have measures in place to combat fraud. Walmart, for example, has a mixed reputation, with some products being of questionable quality, especially when it comes to imported goods like shrimp. Yet, they do enforce standards and conduct testing where possible.
It's a balancing act. These companies are trying to meet consumer demands while keeping prices low, but that can sometimes lead to shortcuts. The key is transparency and better regulation, something that's easier said than done.
As the crew delves deeper into the conversation, they discuss the financial incentives driving food fraud. With billions of dollars at stake, it's no wonder that some companies and individuals resort to deceit. But the consequences are far-reaching, affecting not just the economy, but public health, consumer trust, and even international relations.
According to a study published by the National Center for Biotechnology Information, food fraud isn't just a financial issue, it's a public health crisis. Adulterated foods can introduce harmful substances into the food supply, leading to chronic health issues like cancer, cardiovascular disease, and neurological disorders.
And let's not overlook the environmental impact. Fraudulent practices often involve unsustainable methods of production, such as overfishing or the use of harmful chemicals, which can devastate ecosystems. This adds another layer of complexity to an already multifaceted problem.
But isn't there a case to be made for self-regulation? Some argue that the market will correct itself. Bad actors will eventually be exposed, and consumers will shift their loyalty to more transparent companies. There's a certain Darwinism in business that can't be ignored.
That's optimistic, but it overlooks the fact that many fraudulent practices go undetected for years. By the time a company is exposed, the damage is often done. Regulation is necessary to protect consumers and ensure a level playing field.
The timeline of food fraud reveals a disturbing pattern of deception and exploitation. Early documented cases, like the 1858 swill milk scandal in New York, where milk from diseased cows was watered down and laced with chalk to hide the dilution, show that this issue isn't new. What's changed is the scale and complexity of the fraud. Today, with global supply chains and advanced technology, fraudsters have more tools at their disposal, making it harder to detect and prevent.
But it's also worth noting that we have better tools for detection and prevention than ever before. DNA testing, isotopic analysis, and blockchain technology are all being used to improve traceability and authenticity in the food supply chain. Companies are investing in these technologies to stay ahead of the fraudsters, which is a positive development.
True, but we can't be complacent. The stakes are too high. Consumers need to be aware of what they're buying and demand transparency from companies. It's about holding these businesses accountable and ensuring that they prioritize safety and integrity over profits.
And let's be clear, while some companies are stepping up, others continue to exploit loopholes and cut corners. In countries like Brazil, the meat industry has faced repeated scandals involving the use of carcinogenic substances to improve the appearance and shelf life of meat. This isn't just about fraud. It's about endangering lives for the sake of profit.
Yet, you can't deny that the global food system is complex, and fraud often slips through the cracks. It's not just about bad actors. Sometimes it's about the system itself being overwhelmed by the sheer volume and diversity of products. But that doesn't mean we're powerless. With better regulation, more rigorous testing, and consumer awareness, we can make a difference.
The conversation is sobering, but it's also a call to action. The crew's discussion underscores the importance of vigilance, transparency, and accountability in the fight against food fraud. It's a battle that affects us all, whether we realize it or not.
And if there's one thing to take away from this, it's that we need to be more informed and more proactive as consumers. Don't just trust the label. Know where your food comes from, support companies that prioritize integrity, and demand better from those that don't.
And maybe, just maybe, remember that a little skepticism goes a long way. Not everything is as it seems, but with the right approach, we can navigate the complexities of the food world with a bit more confidence and a lot more awareness.
As the Exploratorium powers up, the crew prepares to continue their journey, leaving behind the tangled web of food fraud, but carrying with them a deeper understanding of its implications. The lesson they've learned isn't just about food. It's about the importance of awareness, of questioning, and of demanding better from the world around us.
And with that, it's time to move on. But we'll carry this knowledge with us, a quiet reminder of the vigilance needed in a world full of deception.
As the Exploratorium continues its journey, the crew's conversation shifts from the concrete realities of food fraud to a broader, more philosophical discussion. They begin to ponder the implications of their discoveries, not just for the present, but for the future.
You know, all this talk about deception and profit makes me wonder, what does it say about us as a society? If food fraud is so widespread, what does that mean for our values? Are we okay with living in a world where the truth is so easily manipulated for profit?
That's a profound question, Aurora. Philosophers have long debated the nature of truth and deception. Immanuel Kant, for instance, argued that truth is a fundamental duty we owe to one another. When we deceive, especially in something as essential as food, we're not just breaking a law, we're breaking a moral covenant.
But isn't deception just a part of human nature? After all, every species uses deception to survive. Camouflage, mimicry, false signals. Humans are no different. We've just taken it to a new level with technology and commerce. You could argue that food fraud is just another form of survival in a highly competitive world.
Maybe, but at what cost? If we continue down this path, what kind of future are we building? A world where even the food we eat is a lie?
The future of food, if current trends continue, could indeed be troubling. As global supply chains become more complex and demand for cheap, abundant food increases, the opportunities for fraud will likely expand. If left unchecked, we could see a future where the very concept of authenticity becomes meaningless, where consumers are left questioning the integrity of every item they purchase.
There are predictions that if food fraud continues to grow, it could lead to widespread public health crises. Imagine a world where entire populations are malnourished, not because there isn't enough food, but because the food they're eating is devoid of real nutrients. It's a dystopian scenario, but one that's not entirely out of the realm of possibility.
But let's not forget, technology is a double-edged sword. Just as it enables fraud, it also provides the tools to combat it. The future could just as easily be one where transparency reigns, where blockchain and DNA testing are standard, and where consumers can trace their food back to the farm with a scan of their phone.
I hope you're right, Victor. But it's going to take more than just technology. It's going to take a shift in our values, a recognition that some things, like trust, are worth more than profit.
The discussion turns to the broader implications of this shift. What would a world look like where truth and transparency are prioritized over profit? Could such a world exist, or are we too entrenched in a system that rewards deception?
There's a concept in philosophy called the social contract, where we agree to certain rules and behaviors for the greater good. If we're going to move towards a future where food is honest and safe, we need to renegotiate that social contract. We need to agree that some things are too important to be left to the whims of the market.
But who gets to decide what's important? Who sets the rules? In a world as diverse as ours, what's a priority for one group might be irrelevant to another. That's where things get tricky.
True, but that's why we need to have these conversations, to find common ground. We might not agree on everything, but surely we can agree that our food should be safe and genuine.
As the crew reflects on the complexities of food fraud, they begin to see the issue not just as a challenge to be solved, but as a mirror reflecting the deeper ethical and moral questions of our time. What kind of world do we want to live in? What are we willing to sacrifice to get there?
In the end, it comes down to choice. Every time we choose to buy from a company that prioritizes transparency, every time we demand better labeling, every time we support legislation that protects consumers, we're making a choice about the kind of world we want to live in.
And if we don't? If we continue to ignore the problem?
Then we may end up in a world where the truth is so deeply buried beneath layers of deception that it's impossible to find. A world where even the simplest act of eating becomes a gamble. But let's not dwell on that. There's still hope, as long as we're willing to act.
With the ship's power fully restored, the crew prepares to resume their journey. But before they go, a moment of levity arises.
All this talk about food has made me hungry. I could really go for something fun, like a Happy Meal or something.
After all that, you want fast food? The irony is delicious.
You do realize we just spent an entire discussion talking about unhealthy food, right?
I know. But sometimes you just want something comforting, you know? Besides, we've got the whole multiverse at our fingertips. There's got to be a version of fast food out there that's actually good for you.
The ship's console lights up, revealing 57 alternate realities that have their own versions of fast food restaurants. Aurora starts reading out a few hilarious variations.
Let's see. We've got mixed pickles, where every meal comes with a side of fermented cucumbers and a complimentary jar of brine. Macartisanal, where every burger is handcrafted by a bearded chef in flannel and served on a reclaimed wood platter. Macrodine, where the burgers are molecularly reconstructed to be calorie-free and taste like whatever you're craving. Metaburger, where you order through a virtual reality headset, but the food only exists in the metaverse. And my personal favorite, quantum queue, where you stand in line but never actually reach the front because time keeps looping.
And in all those realities, I'm sure there's one where the food is actually good for you. Although I'd avoid quantum queue, sounds like a recipe for eternal hunger.
You've got to love the multiverse. Infinite possibilities, and yet we're still stuck with the same old fast food cravings.
The multiverse is endless, and there's always a chance we'll visit the place you're dreaming of. If there's anything you want to see, let us know. After all, in a universe as infinite as this one, anything is possible. If you enjoyed this journey with us, don't forget to like and subscribe. There's a whole cosmos of adventures waiting for us, and we'd love for you to join us on the next one. Until then, farewell to our fellow explorers. May your travels be filled with wonder, your food be genuine, and your questions never stop leading you to new and exciting discoveries.